5, 4, 3. CGP Video Pictures presents Trek Tonight, Season 3. This week, Lower Decks. With your hosts, Christopher Pitcher, Leo Byrne-Janicek, and Keith Jacobson. Tonight's review, episodes 1, 2, and 3. And now live from New York City, Wilmington, Delaware, and Everett, Washington, it's Trek Tonight. Hey there, Trekkers, and welcome back to our third season of Trek Tonight, which we start with our reviews of the show Lower Decks, which has been dropping now for 2 weeks. We got that was that a surprise to you guys that there were two episodes?
That was a big-ass surprise for me. I had no idea that was coming.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Simple, nada.
I'm watching it, right? So I'm watching it, I see the episode, and then, I walk away. And it's on the TV, and then all of a sudden they're still talking, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then I realized there was another episode. So
yeah, I also think it's a bit strange given that they're running out of content because of the strike. So it seems like maybe parse it out a little. I mean, listen, I was happy to get an extra episode.
Yeah.
Because I a big part of me might binge the whole thing in over the course of a day, if given the option. But I hadn't heard they were going to do it. But sometimes they do that, especially with a I was about to say they're only half-hour shows, but sometimes I've seen streamers do that for hour-long shows.
Right.
Usually Amazon drops like 2 or 3 of a new show,
yes,
like right at the beginning, and then every week drops another episode.
Yeah.
It's not
unheard of. It just was a surprise. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about it previous to that, but
yeah,
here we are.
Yep. So because we had some, basically my laptop went in for a repair during our break, and just didn't come out yet in time, so we couldn't come on last week because I kind of my machine kind of runs everything. So yeah, and then all of a sudden I thought, well, we'll only have one episode, we'll do a double header, and now all of a sudden it's 3.
Yeah,
it's a triple header.
A triple header, yeah, exactly. Yeah. If there is such a thing. So it's good to see Lower Decks back. For the first episode of the season was basically the Tuvix spoof.
Yes.
In which you get the Doctor and
Tillips. It was Tillips.
Tillips. That's right. Yeah, blended together, and then you get a lot of Voyager jokes because they're transporting the Voyager that's been restored into some sort of a display back to Earth. And so there's a bunch of Voyager humor through that episode. What'd you guys think of the first one?
I enjoyed it. A lot of deep cuts on Voyager. Voyager is probably the series I may be the least familiar with.
Right.
But like a lot of the ones they hit, I got the references, like the Janeway Paris lizard babies, the robot versions of them. Michael Sullivan from the Fairhaven holodeck things, and of course Dr. Chaotica from Captain Proton.
I love Chaotica. Yes,
I love the way he flickered. Like his animation flickered,
yes,
and it had sort of little almost like dirt on the print, the way like old, celluloid would. So
right. Yep. Hey, Scott Taylor gave us a thumbs up. Scott, good to see you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Scott.
Good to see you back with us here. Yeah, it had that old film quality, which I kind of liked. That was neat. Um, and of course, you had the virus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The macro viruses
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
kept
that was
mutating
fantastic.
and splitting. Um, it's interesting. I would say, and this I think goes for all of these episodes, is we were seeing an evolution of these characters,
I was
Mhm.
going
like
to
the
say
main
that. Yeah.
four, in a way that you don't usually get in an animated show, or even a sitcom.
Right.
Characters tend to, most TV shows they tend to stay the same. I would say that is something that has changed over the last 10 or more years. There has been movement towards actual character development and change over the course of a long show. But, especially for a comedy, people tend to be. I mean, Lucy always had a crazy scheme. She would drag Ethel in, and Ricky would get upset, and, you
Right.
know, he and Freddie would like, you know, hey, Rick, I've got an idea to, embarrass the girls, instead of
Yeah.
talking to them.
Yeah.
Um, so I like in this episode, spoiler alert for
Oh
you
yeah.
know
Yeah. What are you doing
I'm
watching
assuming by this
Cynthia?
point people have watched them. I mean,
yeah. Let's assume that people watch it, but
considering the
just saying
fact that
spoiler alert in case,
we
just
are
in
a week
case,
late, but yeah, yeah.
yeah, is
Um,
Boimler, Tendi, and Mariner all get promoted to Lieutenant JG,
right.
as well as T'Lyn, our new Vulcan. Uh, so, sort of exchange officer. Not
Yeah.
really. She's wearing a Starfleet uniform, but she has provisional ensign, I think is the term they use, and she gets promoted. And her little rank insignia is very much like the ones that Chakotay, the Maquis crew, wore on Voyager. So
Uh-huh.
there's a precedent for that. And then in this one, they everything sort of goes crazy on the on Voyager while they're trying to solve the Tuvix problem, and the fact that Captain Freeman is like looks up, he was like, "Well, I'm sure Janeway had a solution for that," and she said,
Yeah.
"Oh, she just straight up murdered Tuvix,"
Yeah.
and then
Oh, I'm sure. I love that. I mean,
yeah,
that I thought was great.
yeah,
Because, but it is true. Just to quickly jump back to what you were saying about
yeah,
the pattern of a lot of sitcoms. Yeah, I
yeah.
keep in the back of my mind anticipating them all getting demoted.
Yeah.
You know
I
what I
don't
mean?
think
And
they're
it's
going to do
because
that.
I grew up with that idea that good things happen to people on sitcoms, but they don't always stay that way.
They generally, like
I,
if you win the lottery in the cold open, you're probably going to lose it all by the end of
By
the
the end
yeah.
of the
episode.
episode, right? Yeah.
I
So,
really
Uh,
hope that's not the path they take with this, though.
oh, I do
I
too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I,
I don't think it will be. Um, but the fact that we kept getting all these weird uh, combinations of crew members, and I think my favorite, because it was maybe the worst one, which was Swellens, which was Steve Stevens and Matt the Whale from
yeah,
Cetacean Operation, and he like, even uh, uh, to Billups said it's not my best work.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that they're
Who
just
was it that they blended with Shax?
I'm not like I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know who the
Um,
woman was that they blended with him, but yeah,
if anybody watching knows,
yeah. Let us know because I wasn't
let
sure.
us know. I
Yeah,
couldn't quite figure that out either.
yeah,
Um, but and the idea that they're discussing the ethical complications. So Lynn's like, I'm a newcomer. I have no basically I've got no horse in this race.
yeah,
Uh, but they put everybody in a big they beam every because people keep being combined and the ship's being taken over, and then she beams them all into the brig, but into one like horrifying like
giant blob.
mass of flesh and like
Yeah,
like
limbs sticking out. Yeah,
yeah, it's just awful. But
yeah,
because um, to Billups had upgraded one of the tricorders, the medical tricorders, they were able to separate because of personality uh, you know, I'm not sure how you scan personality, but they are able to, and
Yeah.
I'm just
Well,
gonna
I thought it
accept
was
that.
funny. Yeah, I thought it was funny because they've got that giant orb of arms and legs
Yeah,
and flesh, and then all of a sudden it grows a mouth and licks the force
yeah,
field. And my 4-year-old is in the background. All of a sudden, I hear her laugh. I guess she was. I didn't even realize she was watching it. And then all of a sudden, this big mouth appears and licks the screen, and she laughed. So
I could see how a 4-year-old would think that's
yeah,
funny.
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I sort of thought it was funny. I'm not sure what that says about me.
Yeah,
But I love so the scene with Shax, with not with Shax, with Ransom and Mariner. She's like, take this back, this pet back. I don't want it. And he says, no, you're gonna take it. And he said, listen, you've had some bad officers. They've given up on you. The promotion give up on you, but I'm not going to do that. Um, you're going to make a fine officer. And she's like, well, maybe I'll just stay here until you take it back. He's like, says, you do you. And he just starts doing like pull-ups because it's Ransom. And, they feel bad because Rutherford didn't get promoted. And he says, well, because he broke Voyager with Neelix's,
cheese.
Cheese, which was an episode. And he says, well, they don't promote engineers for breaking stuff. So, but, he's still very like upbeat. And, Mariner's like, oh, like, she's like, Formula points out, it says, Lieutenant JGs, we're still lower decks. We're barely a step above ensign. It's not going to be that different from being lower decks, and that sort of rallies them, which is nice. It's a nice little end.
Right.
There is, we can discuss. There is they've started to introduce a mystery in this season.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to discuss that at the end, because it doesn't really have a bearing on the rest of the episode? Let's maybe discuss it at the end.
Okay,
All right.
that's fine.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Any other thoughts on this episode? I mean, I could talk for quite a while, but I think
well, the only thought that I have, and it kind of carries from this episode into the next one as well, but that is just Ransom as a character is starting to interest me, because during the first few seasons, I just thought of Ransom as just a stupid meathead,
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, Ransom himself, just for the way he's treating Mariner, is starting to go, well, maybe is a good officer, and I don't know. I just
Yeah.
we're getting character growth from the main cast, but also from Ransom, which I was not expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's trying to help her, and that becomes
Mhm.
clearer and clearer as we get into this season. Although I do have to say, if we're done with this episode, I gotta jump into the scene between he and Shax, which was a spoof on the scene between the Dr. Crusher and
Counselor Troy.
Counselor Troy doing their
Oh God, yeah.
Oh yeah.
exercises, which I just thought was fantastic.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah,
That was the sort of the not quite the opening, but at the very beginning of the
Yeah.
next episode,
yeah,
which is I have no bones, and yet I must flee.
Right.
A little spoof on the title "I have no mouth and I must scream" from
Right.
Harlan Ellison. But they're like trying to stretch it out. They're like, and they're, apparently Shax is having some problems with Dr. Ta'ana, and so sometimes she's all over me, and then she says I'm too clingy, and then she's hiding under the bed, and Rancid goes, did you like try like going and on the sheets? He goes, of course I tried.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he's like, that's not insulting, that's something he does.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I'm going to have to go back, and I didn't have time to look at it, but I almost think the costumes are the same as the ones they wore, because at one moment or two, Ransom looks like he's got boobs, and it's because of the design of the top.
Yeah,
Right.
they're the exact same
They're
outfits that
exactly
That's
they
the
what I
wore.
same.
thought. Yeah,
They're exactly the same. Yeah.
yeah,
It was again a perfect nod to that sort of a very ridiculous scene from the
yes,
original TNG.
yeah,
Um, but uh, Mariner overhears. I mean, she's sort of like suspicious of the whole thing. Everybody else is sort of feeling like, oh, it's going to be weird not being down here. And Boimler is like, apparently he has a dent above his bunk for every time that like red alert would go up, and he would like sit straight up and you know
hang his head. Yeah, yeah,
hit his head. Um, and she's going in to work out in the gym. She overhears Ransom says, "Listen, Mariner's not going to be my problem for much longer." And she's like, he's out to get me. And then she's like, "I'm going to sabotage myself." And they're like, "Is that, like I don't think is he smart or is he dumb?" And she's, "I don't know." She's just pissed off because she thinks he's fucking with her like so many other commanders have.
right.
Um, so she goes on a mission dressed in her Starfleet, like workout clothes,
Yeah,
and just is like very flip and insubordinate. There's Ensign Gary with her, and they have to go to a menagerie where some humans have been scooped up by
Poor Gary.
yeah.
poor Ensign Gary. That was he had a hell of a first away mission. Uh,
Oh.
Yeah, that was a humorous concept. The idea that
yeah,
that there were some aliens and they were returning humans
yeah,
to the Federation because they'd accidentally been put
scooped
in
up. Yeah,
this zoo.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
And I also love the fact is we were voted one of uh, we're in the top 1,000 menageries in the quadrant. I'm like, how many menageries are there
yeah,
in the Federation?
yeah.
That guy kind of looked like a banana. What was his name? I have it in my notes.
Oh, I've forgotten, but
I wrote it down
yeah,
because
he did look a bit like a banana.
um, Narj, Narj.
Right, right,
One of the
right.
top 1,000 in the quadrant.
Yeah,
And there's and they are there, and of course, Mariner's like, so when did you decide to get into the prison business? It's like, so you just lock up everything you love? He goes, yes, and so he's trying to like, and Ransom is doing a good job saying like, oh, she's a firebrand, but I trust her with my life, and like all the encouragement just seems to anger her further. And Gary's like, "Are you breaking up?" She's like, "Yes." His coworkers. He's like, like he doesn't know what the hell is going on.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Gary's confused.
Were there any Easter eggs in that episode? I didn't really see much.
well, later on there is you see people visiting the menagerie. And I forgot the name of these aliens. There's fish aliens who appeared in the first season of TNG. If you remember the thing, they were like in hibernation, and they opened up these.
Oh
they,
yeah,
they're just like eating like all this disgusting raw fish.
yeah.
That one of those characters was played by Mick Fleetwood, a Fleetwood Mac who wanted to be on Star Trek and did
Oh,
not
cool.
care if he spoke or not.
Right.
They put the makeup on him, and he's unrecognizable. But he was like, there are a lot of celebrities who want to be on Star Trek and are willing to play sort of bit parts to be part of that canon.
Right.
Also during during at the end where we're seeing a bunch of different uh, people visiting the menagerie.
Yeah.
We also see the orange skinned aliens that Kirk met when I think
From
Ball,
the Apple.
the app from the
Yeah.
Apple, right? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, I saw those guys too. I was like, and one was like kid is like sort of poking at the human cage, like um, and but meanwhile, there's also the thing is like, Brad, like Boimler's like, oh, I'm gonna get my own quarters, and he's so excited. He goes in, and it's right by the Bessard scoop, and it's just like all this like bright red light is like pouring in, and meanwhile, Rutherford is like, listen, I'm just gonna get promoted today, so we're all stick together. And everybody's like, I think that takes sometimes 6 years. No, I got it. and he keeps coming up with like new improvements to do.
Right, but
But
then
there's this
he ends up having a guy who becomes all of a sudden his competition.
yes, Livick, um, who is this the new guy is another ensign,
Yeah.
and like he was like, hey, I've improved this thing by 0.5%, and that's great, but you know,
Look
Livick
at
just
the
did it by
0.6.
0.6%. You know, it's like these changes are so incremental.
Yes.
And if there are any engineers in the audience, they may speak to the sort of the authenticity of that sort of uh, improvement. But you know, he's knocking himself out the whole episode trying to get this promotion,
Yeah.
and he's getting clinic. You know, Boimler then moves out of his quarters. He also tries to put on Medusa goggles, like from
Yeah, that was an Easter egg. The Medusa goggles were.
By the way,
yeah,
I do want to point something out. I
Yeah.
actually didn't notice. It was someone else who pointed it out to me. In our lower left picture, take a look at a picture of the Cerritos there for a second.
Right.
And now imagine the view out of Boimler's quarters, which appears to be somewhere to the front and looking back at the front of one of the
yeah.
nacelles. I don't see where his quarters actually are on the Cerritos.
I,
Right.
I that is I've seen that commented on too, but I'm willing to hand wave it because it's a funny bit.
Yeah.
Me too, yes.
Yeah.
So he just like even the gut, and then they improve like you know one of these incremental improvements. It's like and his goggles, the goggles they do nothing.
Yeah.
As
Well,
Randall
what I like
Wolfcastle
is he
said,
starts to move around.
yeah,
So then the next one he's all excited about because it's right next to the holodeck. Well, it's right
it's
in
between two
between
holodecks.
two holodecks, and you just start hearing everything going on. Um, you know, in between the two of them. So
Yeah,
clearly they're very shallow walls between.
Yeah, it's
yeah. You
hilarious that
think
they don't have.
somebody would soundproof the holodeck,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if there's quarters in between. Um, but that is driving him nuts because it's Shax and Ta'ana having their weird sort of uh, holodeck play, presumably that ends up with sex, um, and you know they like it rough and they like it weird, um, and then the captain is practicing her scatting, and the other one,
Right.
and you know he's between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Uh, but I did like how Shax helps him move in. He's like,
Yeah.
whatever you need, baby bear. I love the
Yeah.
fact that, you know, they still have that kind of relationship, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, like, back at the menagerie, we're sort of jumping around a little. There's a creature called Moopsie who says Moopsie, who looks kind of like a
Moopsie.
Pokemon.
Yeah.
This little white creature with sort of a
Moopsie.
kitty cat face, and it escapes, and Nara's just like, oh, holy shit, you know, holy fuck, is it? They're like,
We're
there's like, what,
told
your
that
most
is-
adorable prisoners escaped? He's like, no, she's the most dangerous.
Yeah. Because
And
it drinks.
Keith,
It drinks
you're
your
dying
blood.
to say it. Keith, you're dying to say it.
I was just going to say this what you just said. Yeah, that it's the
drinks
most
your blood.
dangerous. No, it's
I
dangerous.
just thought
friend.
that was funny. I don't know why. It drinks your
Yeah.
blood.
It drinks bones.
It
Yeah.
drinks
This creature.
bones.
And it starts like there's another exhibit. I forget the sort of like swamp gobblers, as they're called. These sort of like fearsome looking creatures, and it gets into their pen, and they're backing away before when they see it through their
Yeah.
screen, and it leaps on the back and it's like the fangs, and just it goes gray and it just deflates like a balloon,
Yeah.
which is horrifying,
Yeah.
horrifying.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, there's a lot of running around and trying to, you know, but the fact that it's just sort of like, it is otherwise just this adorable little creature who just happens to be a terrifying predator.
Right.
So, and they're locked themselves in a room with Nars and they're trying to figure out, and there's a lot of like accusations, and you find out that, you know, like Mariner didn't let it loose because it kind of looked like she was getting, like, you know, there was a lot of indication. She's like, I'm just going to let this thing out, fuck with this guy.
Right.
But
Right.
she didn't. It turns out it was the humans that they were there to pick up, because they figured if it got out, killed Nars, they could make a lot of money running this menagerie. Um, which earned
Humans are
them.
the worst.
They are, and Gary says, they say humans are the most dangerous, but we don't have claws and we don't drink bones. And then you find out that they've done this, and he's like, oh crap. Uh, so they, um, but you also find out that basically um, Ransom has says, I'm not gonna like I'm when I said you're not gonna be my problem is I'm not gonna take your bait. I'm not gonna like let you like deliberately sabotage your career. You could be a great officer, but uh, I'm not gonna promote you and then just demote you down because there's you know I'm a better commander than that. And
Right.
they sort of have an accord. Uh, she ends up punching out. He's like something about the skin of our teeth because now they escaped out of the room. Turns out Narj does have bones because Moopsie does drain him. The Banana Man says, "Well, I'm ossified," and sure enough,
Yeah.
uh, but it's the control room, and the thing is like going to crash into the planet, and they lure Moopsie by using Ransom's teeth. Like Mariner, he's like he orders Mariner to punch him in the face, and she does like this very like light tapping. He says, "No, really," and she just like socks him, and he starts spitting out teeth, and they put a trail of teeth
A
to get him
very
back into.
strange idea.
It is very strange, and she's like, "I didn't really need to get all of them out. I probably only needed 10."
Yeah.
Um, but they get in, and that's they find
Breadcrumbs
out
of
the humans have been fucking around with stuff. Um, and but it was a nice moment because it's nice to see them have that accord, and it is, as Keith said, like Ransom has been sort of funny because he's a bit of a meathead and he's the guy the gym rat, and but he became a commander and he's the first officer even if it's a California class.
Right.
So he's got to have something on the ball,
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not just, and it was you mentioning, the Shaq's baby bear line
yeah,
was actually got me started thinking along the lines. Usually in sitcoms, um, if it's a, for lack of a better phrase, an us against them kind of sitcom where
yeah,
you've got the enlisted personnel, who it's them against the officers, and the
yeah,
officers are almost always portrayed as incompetent in some way or another.
yeah,
Um, Lower decks is different because even though you've got the lower decks versus the upper decks,
yeah,
um, they're not playing off the upper decks like they're completely stupid. In episode 3, we got a little bit of stupidity from the captain, a
yeah,
little bit, but she eventually fixes that towards the end. But we're actually portraying the upper decks as actually competent, alibi through a comedic lens still.
yeah,
So, and I think that is an unusual way of approaching
yeah,
a comedy. It's
yeah.
different than how it usually is done.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it allows for character development.
Mm-hmm.
Rutherford finally does, like, after being one up by Livick all episode long. He says, "Oh, I really shouldn't have turned down those other. Maybe I shouldn't have turned down all those promotions they offered me." And Tendi, who's been like, "Don't worry about it. Like, we're still going to be friends." And all this stuff. He says, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, all this. He lists all the stuff he did." And he says, "Well, can't you just ask for that then?" He says, "No, no. You really have to earn it. They're very particular in engineering." And she goes, and Phillips is about to promote Livick, despite his very short tenure here on
Right.
the Cerritos. She says, "Hey, this is hey, Phillips, can Rutherford have a promotion for we're taking the hull off so we could get through that thing uh, a while back. If you remember when the end of
Yeah.
season 2 when they stripped the hull off, to go through that weird. I forgot it was some it was a some I forget now. I look like an
I
idiot,
don't
but
remember, but yeah,
it was whatever the
yeah,
plot device of
yeah,
the episode was.
right,
And he's about to pin it on Livick, and he's like, sure. And he just tosses across engineering, and the catch it and puts it on. He said, sorry, Livick, maybe next time. And and Rutherford has been going, Livick, all episode. Livick looks and goes, it's Rutherford
yeah,
and Tendi. uh, but he finally gets his promotion, which was a nice thing because you want to see all your characters sort of. I mean, I'm sure they could have played with it, but I like the fact that because he's certainly done a lot of really innovative stuff, and he certainly deserves it.
right.
So I quite enjoyed that. Um, I liked.
I think my favorite though of the three was the one about the computer.
Yes.
And I think part of the reason it was so funny to me just was in the beginning where they just kept having to say over and over again, but it's a nice computer.
Yeah.
You know,
They this let's jumping
it's not
to
dominate. It's not interested in dominating people, or
yeah.
yeah,
It's there's episode 3. They come to essentially a ring world,
right,
and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, like in Halo." I'm like, "Well, actually, more like the book Ring World,"
yeah,
which, and I think he got the idea. It's sort of like a trimmed down Dyson sphere. I'm not sure who. It feels like it probably had like a scientific, like theoretical origin, uh, but I can't speak to that with any
right,
authority. But the first time it appeared in popular culture was a book called Ringworld, of which there were a number of sequels written by Larry Niven.
yeah,
And it's this culture of are they a Federation world, but they're just like artists and poets, and they have this AI that maintains everything. And they're saying, listen, there've been some problems. They're like, you don't? No, he's not dominating. He's just like, his hardware's like a little old, and uh, it's Ransom and the captain, and they go down there, and the computer's super nice to them, and they're chatting, and can we take a
he's
look
all
at
very
your
apologetic. I
yeah,
love
like
that too. It's like, oh yeah, and then they're like, well, when was the last time you were updated? Well, when the old ones left, or something like that.
yeah, they sent it
How
to
many
fifth
years ago was
dimensional
that?
space. It was like 3 million. It was like 6 million years ago, or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, but that was a great day.
Yeah, that was a great day. Great harvest that year.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and Ransom was like, Captain, we have engineers. He's like, listen, I minored in antiquated computer systems, so I'm sure, or technology. I'm sure I've got this. And it was more arrogance. I think it's like, as a captain, I imagine a lot of it is giving orders to people who know their business, and
right.
you kind of feel like maybe I don't get to do the thing. It's a lot of telling other people what to do. So she was like, "Oh, I can handle this.
Yeah,
I might into this." It's kind of like, "Hey, I used to play soccer when I was in college," and it's like, "Yeah, that was like 30 years ago. I'm not sure your skills are as good as they were then."
yeah. Well, and I made me think too. There was that one throwaway line that Ransom had where the woman's talking about how she's so upset that she just can't create art to her usual standard,
Yeah,
and it's basically the two sets of art look identical.
Right.
yeah.
But then I love Ransom's like yeah, and he's sort of making a comment about it, and again, that's sort of out of his wheelhouse a little bit.
Yeah, that is.
But is
Yeah,
it though? Because he looks at the other. He then looks across the at the other one. The supposedly good one.
Yeah,
And it's like he's still not impressed with the good
yeah,
one.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, neither one of them are very impressive, but yeah, I thought it was funny.
But yeah, it was funny. And also, like, he had some like very like deep insights into the art. So
Yeah. Now, there's a character that I think would be hard those aliens would be kind of hard to translate into real life if you had to. With the eyebrows that go like way out.
yeah, I mean, it probably would look silly in live action.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't even mention the throwaway line between Mariner and Boimler when she says, "Yeah, well, it's sort of like that Pike thing we're not supposed to talk about."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hold on, I'll be right back.
yeah, okay, sure. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Uh, what did you think of the third one, Keith? Is there anything you left
I
out?
really I enjoyed the bit with Boimler, and I cannot remember the Vulcan
Yeah.
name. Vulcan's name.
Oh, I meant to memorize it. Talil, something like that.
Something like that. Anyway, but
Yeah,
I really enjoyed Boimler's growth again in this I mean, this whole season just seems to be about the characters' growth into actually not quite the screw ups they're used to being.
right.
Boimler is, of course, is Boimlering all around like Boimler is going to do. Boimler does Boimler,
Yeah,
and his
yeah,
ensigns that he's supposed to be in command of are going, well, we want to, are we ever going to get to do anything? And meanwhile, the Vulcan chick is going, you should let your ensigns do something.
yeah.
And I just don't want anybody to die. And
Well, and I thought it was interesting because his overall, you know, concern was, well, who am I now? All of a sudden, I got promoted, and who am I to all of a sudden send them on something dangerous? Which we were just talking, Leo, about Boimler in this episode, and about his struggles with basically micromanaging or taking over everything,
Yes.
for all his ensigns when he could have been commanding. What's the name of the Vulcan? Talil?
Talin.
Talin.
Talin,
I knew there was
yes.
an L in there. Yeah. But that was some interesting development for Boimler too, I think.
Yeah.
It was. The idea that he's sort of, as he says, we're sort of getting to the chase. He's like, I was in ensign with these people like a week ago, and because of some random chance now, I can tell them what to do, and it seems weird, and I don't feel like I
Right.
don't want to put them in danger. And she's like, well, listen, it's not random. You were promoted for a good reason, and just like Ransom trusts you, they will trust you as well
Right.
to do the right thing. But she's a very Vulcan, like it appears a mountain or a volcano has appeared.
Yeah.
A volcano. Um,
Yeah. I like her. I think she's great. But it's funny because now that she's on board the Cerritos, you don't really see the part of her personality that made her get in trouble with the Vulcans.
Well,
I'm
by
hoping we
by,
see
by
more.
human standards, she's very reserved. But
Yes.
by Vulcan standards, she's a bit of a wild card.
Yeah. But do you think she's as much of a wild card now as she was in that episode?
I don't know.
Because to me, she feels very Vulcan now.
I think so, but I think it's through as compared to the rest of the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be.
Like I think she might still like instead of like meditating, she might work on a scientific project,
Right.
as she did in her first appearance. And for the
Right.
Vulcans, they were like, you were told to do this. Why aren't you doing this? She said, well, that is not a logical use of my time. You know, it is these emotional outbursts that have caused you, caused the damage to your career.
Still one of my favorite Lower Decks episodes.
Yeah.
That is
The
a terrific
characters on the different ships and different races was great.
Yeah.
Oh, and we're forgetting, the biggest news of all from that episode, from this episode 3.
Yeah.
Boimler dies.
Right.
He does, and he ends up in this room. There's the black mountain out the window. The floor has this sort of jagged sort of pattern, which is reminiscent of the red room from
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks.
Yep.
And he sees the koala,
Yep.
which is this sort of mysterious figure that we've been teased in other episodes. Um, so yeah, he and I think it was Ransom was like, oh, this is never forget your first fatality.
Right.
You know,
I hope they never tell
explain.
us about the koala.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything they can come up with that would be as intriguing as the mystery itself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We
Well,
just,
it's like you always say, Leo. You always say that sometimes things are better left unexplained.
I agree. I know. Yeah. Well, I agree with myself.
You do,
Um,
which
is
is
that
good.
sometimes like a magic trick. Like if you know how a magic trick is done, it's kind of like oh, because it's always usually something very mundane and it's kind
Right.
of disappointing. And even though you rationally know there's no magic, no literal ta-da transformation, uh,
Right.
it's it is fun to just sort of go along with the ride.
Right.
Uh, so I like the fact that it is deliberately mysterious because
Yeah.
unless they've got something cooked up that is fucking boffo, um, I just assume not know.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh
uh,
boy.
I like the
oh,
anomalies room that they get to visit that
oh
Yeah.
yeah, I
Mariner,
forgot about that. Yes,
Rutherford, and
the anomalous
Tendi,
room.
Yeah.
which had the hat that turned Billups into a church steeple, um, the spider that causes your head to fall off and skitter away.
Yeah. I didn't
Uh,
remember the Betazoid box though.
that is from an early, of I think a first season episode of TNG. I think it's remember when Deanna is supposed to get married to this 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 human kid who was this kid. He was like a young man, the
Right.
doctor, and because his her dad's was good friends with this guy's dad, and they made this like you know betrothal sort of arrangement.
Right.
Um, and I think it was Armin Shimmerman actually played, aka Quark, played the box in the original one. It's kind of weird and creepy, much like this one. But they also did the game from DS9,
Yeah.
Alamarain, 1, 2, 3, and the fact that because they're being given the business by Lieutenant Dirk, who makes them scan like the chips, the isolinear chips,
Yeah.
because there's one faulty one and they have to do it all by hand.
Right.
And they're debating, like, are they hazing us? And they're like, no. Mariner's like, first of all, they're not cool enough to be doing that, you know, um, and they're gonna trap him in the Alamarine thing with the box. And he tells this horrible story about being trapped in that game when he was a kid for like 2 months, and how it's like triggering for him and all this stuff. And Mariner's like, "Hey, what do you tell me about is this Tellarite slop jazz?"
Yeah.
Slop
And
jazz.
it's like the idea of somebody who loves an obscure kind of music is willing to talk ad nauseum, and she's just like, oh yeah, like it's really wet. That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
While they dismantle it, Rutherford, of course, gets trapped in it with the box, and he has to run through, and he solves it much quicker than the folks on Deep Space Nine did.
Yeah.
Um, and they,
I love the
there's a-
fact that they were saying, is the box an AI? And they're like, no, it just kind of picks up phrases it hears.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and it's things like motherfucker.
yeah.
It's like he's
No,
like
did
first like a blue
Doctor T
streak, and yeah,
like
It's a parrot.
eat a bag of Borg dicks, motherfucker.
right, yeah,
So, Dr. Dr. Tiana was in here. Um, so, but at the end, it gets zapped with because one of the other gizmos from that room looks a little bit like the probe that Picard had, because it goes, "Did I just live like a whole like a virtual life?" And Rutherford's like, "Sorry, man." He goes, "Oh, I miss my wife."
ah,
Uh,
Oh.
so apparently, he went through a very similar thing to Picard. I don't know. That
yeah,
was my impression. It was a bit of a throwaway. But interestingly enough, in the first episode, Michael Sullivan from Fairhaven goes, at one point when he's like, just look, you know, he's like polishing like a console, like a bartender, because he was a bartender in the Hollow Suite. I miss my wife. because apparently, uh, looking it up is, again, it's been a while since I've seen those episodes.
Yeah.
Like Janeway became sort of infatuated with him, and he had a wife, and she reprogrammed it that he was single, and that he had this like this wonderful education, so they could have like this sort of romance, but
Right.
it's doomed as all hollow relationships are. Uh, so, but that line, I don't know whether that was a throwback from the first episode or just
I don't know. I didn't really remember a lot of the Fairhaven stuff, so some of that was lost on me. I think that was probably part of the reason why. And I watched Voyager and I liked it, but I think it was part of the reason why the first episode of the season wasn't as big a hit for me as it could have been, was because I just didn't remember a lot of it. So there were things that I sort of got. Like I knew he was from Fairhaven. I mean, I got that, but
yeah,
I didn't remember the jokes. So, because I just didn't remember the whole plot of those
right.
episodes. So, I don't know. Hey, do we want to talk about, because we're down getting close to the end?
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the mystery and
Yes.
are those the lower decks crews we've seen before or not?
One of them was there's this new mystery ship that is appeared in both Klingon and Romulan space,
Right.
and we see the same Klingon ship that we saw from the uh, we I forgot the name of the episode, We Dodge or something like that, which was when we saw the lower decks from a Vulcan ship, a Klingon ship, and the
Right.
Cerritos.
Right.
Um, and the lower decker who became the Klingon captain, because his own captain was trying to start it. He was behind the whole Pakled incursion to the
Right.
Federation, um, and he's still the captain. Uh, and they see this ship, and it's like, well, there's only one life form on it, and there's like, should we destroy it? He says, no. Well, there's no honor in destroying like, some nothing ship. Like
Right.
continue course to Kronos, and then it like goes up and this fires the beam. Like all their systems go down, weapons, shields, whatever, and everybody. And then you see like floating debris. Like you
Right.
see the Klingon thing, but and this is something based on something I've read online. I didn't necessarily notice this myself. Is you don't see any bodies. There are no bodies,
Oh,
just debris.
interesting.
Um, there's also a Romulan ship, and you
Right.
see two Romulans talking about their plots against their commander.
Yeah.
And if you
I
notice, here's another
love
Easter egg
that.
because they've just tortured a Reman, uh, because evil Romulans. But the bucket that they're using to clean up looks like the part of the cloaking device from TOS. Uh,
Oh.
Craig Lubin
yeah,
is here, and he says the Klingon Robin and lower decker ships may be gone, but are their crews still around?
Indeed, are
that is the
they?
question because we don't see any bodies. Usually,
Right.
you would see something, um, and again, like everything goes down, and they get blasted. So it is possible they're being transported somewhere,
Right.
captured.
Right.
So because just murdering two ships like that seems like a bit of a kind of a like bit of a downer for a show like this. Um,
Right.
but so we will see.
Yeah.
Um, there are a couple of theories. I have a couple of theories.
Well, what is your theory, Leo?
Well, I have two theories. One might not work, which is it might be Badgie, because it feels like Badgie would. Although Badgie feels like he likes to torture people, but because we know that he's tied into a bit of Rutherford's old implant that was
Right.
floating around and got picked up.
Right.
Uh, or it is the mirror, not mirror, but the duplicate Boimler, who is part of
Ooh.
Section 31.
Ah, that's true.
I hadn't
But
thought
it
of
might,
that one.
But then what would Section 31 be doing? I mean, why would they want to be destroying their ships?
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it does seem like some sort of like spy shenanigans.
Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to sow discord
Right. Right.
amongst the Klingons or Romulans.
Right.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the Boimler the Section 31 Boimler clone. That's an interesting thought. For a while, my money was on Badgie and Peanut Hamper.
Right.
But now that you mention it, because that was a pretty big thing. What, last season or the season
Yeah.
before, when they did the when they dropped the Boimler clone on us, and that now we
Yeah.
get recruited by Section 31. So
Well,
Yeah,
and
that was-
and I think they said there is one life form aboard, right?
yeah, they said one life form aboard.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
And this is lower deck, so who knows what kind of weird shenanigans Section 31 might be up to.
Oh, well, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, all the
You're
stuff
right.
they had like in Picard, all the crap they collected, it was just like a weirdo, like obsessive compulsives, like garage.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you are right. It's not going to be anything too dark and nefarious because it's lower decks, but
Right.
But it's interesting, and it's kind of cool that they're dropping that in. Because we saw that ending on 2 episodes, correct?
Yeah. Well, one, it was the end of the first episode with the Klingons, and it was the cold open, I think.
That's right.
For the
Yes.
first,
That's
for the second episode. There was no cold open in the third episode.
right.
It went
Yeah, it
into
went
the
straight to
credits.
opening titles. Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
I don't know. I mean, that's let's leave it open to wild speculation at this point.
That's all we've got for us.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, next week we will be back on our regular schedule with the next episode.
Yeah.
Any ideas? Any hints as to what that episode's going to be about?
I don't know. I haven't found anything, but I haven't had time to sort of look into that today.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm enjoying this season. I like the character progression. I'm glad that they're all now Lieutenant JGs, because they're still like lower decks. They're still getting sort of like not always the greatest jobs.
Right.
Right.
Also mentioned that Ransom and Dirk were hazing them.
Yes. I guess
like,
they
find
are
like,
that cool.
Yeah, they are that cool, and so it seems interesting. We also found out that the hazings were resolved by blindfolded saber battles on an Orion ship, according to Tendi. So
yeah, there was something else though about licking something. I don't remember.
Yeah, for the hazing was like licking a bulkhead with like cleaning a bulkhead with your tongue.
Yeah.
And and then resolved with blindfolded saber battles.
Yeah.
I
want to hear more about, but not right now.
Yeah.
Yes. Mariner was definitely intrigued.
I do agree with you about the character growth in these first 3 seasons. Is really getting to me. I'm really enjoying it. It's not something you see that often in a comic. I know I've said this before, and I'm hoping that there's sort of an overall plan for Lower Decks.
Right.
That it, as much as I like shows like The Simpsons and Futurama and stuff like that,
right.
I don't think I want Lower Decks to go on forever. I want there to be a point where they get promoted out of the Lower Decks.
Yeah.
And I think I would really enjoy seeing that. And if that happens, as it becomes the end of the series, well, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, I mean, like I'd rather have, let's say, 6 great seasons, just to pick a number out of the thin air, than have it then sort of take a dip and be treading water.
Yeah, sure. Well, Craig says he's happy about the character growth.
Yes, thank you, Craig.
Yes. So, ooh, Jason Howard.
Jason.
Hey, Jason.
Craig late, unfathomable. Cheers, guys. Excellent show as always. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much.
I do want to show off. For Star Trek Day, I bought myself a Cerritos Stein.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
There was a discount on the Star Trek website, so I decided to indulge myself.
Well, there you go.
Neat.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. All right, guys. Do you have anything else?
Oh God, I mean, there were so many little Easter eggs, but nothing. Let me look at my notes to see if there's anything
Okay.
that I've forgotten. Uh,
Oh, John Van Gostein also,
John.
gentlemen. Hey, John, good to see you. And of course, Craig, who knows Jason, says Jason. And then John says, awesome Stein.
It
Thank
is
you,
an
John.
awesome Stein.
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
I mean, without we could really go down the wormhole here. But honestly,
What?
I enjoyed all 3 episodes.
yeah, I did too.
I'm looking forward to more.
Yep.
I like the character growth. I like I like the inclusion of Talin.
Right.
And
So
I'm hoping we see more of Livik.
Livik. So we're now 3 episodes into the season. And how many episodes are there in the season? 10? 10.
Yeah.
10.
10.
I'm not sure if this was in the green room we were saying this, but I mean, as much as I enjoy having all of a sudden 3 episodes under my belt, all of a sudden I'm realizing, oh my God, that means there's only 7 episodes left,
Right.
Yeah.
If there was just the one, we could get more.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that they dropped the 2 early, well, again, like I said, I don't know whether this was in the green room or on air, but it came as a shock to me. I didn't realize that we're going to drop 2 at one time. So, but oh well.
Oh, by the way, here's my last thing: is the curator on the Voyager Museum was voiced by Andy Richter, formerly.
Andy Richter,
the second in command of Conan O'Brien.
Yes.
Neat.
Yeah. Very popular with another friend of ours.
Yeah.
At any rate, Andy Richter. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my. All right. I'm going to roll us out of here a little bit early because my sinuses are driving me nuts. But we will see you next week.
Yes.
New time, 8:00. Keith has been wonderful at being able to agree to come back to the 8:00 time.
Yes.
We really appreciate it.
Work went late tonight. I got here with 5 minutes to spare.
I saw that. It was very exciting. So we will see you all great next week. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
Wonderful week. And let me see. I'm going to call this up. I'm doing this a different way, guys.
Oh, I'm excited to see this.
Look at here. It's just different for me.
Polka Jazz.